Hi there, Vibe Gardeners. Welcome to another episode of Vibe Gardening from Edition. We're going to talk about how I learned to grow these chamomiles and lots more around the house and how I made them successful so that you could become a chamomile tea connoisseur like me as well. With that said, let's go. All right, guys. So, kind of like most of you here, or a lot of you out there, or I don't know the real number here, but I'm a chamomile tea lover. I love chamomile tea. And so that's what naturally got me into growing chamomile. And so this is my year two here, and I feel like I've really kind of got myself into a sort of experience here that would really help others grow and enjoy chamomile from their own garden, which in my opinion has become significantly more tasty than any chamomile tea you can get in stores. So in this episode, we're going to go over kind of the different the choice of chamomile you have and which one I picked, and then we're going to go into how to start them, when to start them, and then we're going to talk about how to transition them outdoors, some of the challenges you'll face, sort of like the life cycle that I've observed here in Zone 6A, and how to make them into wonderful tea. Now, with that said, guys, here we go. All right, so the first thing we kind of want to get into a little bit is what kind of chamomile we're growing here. So there's two main form of chamomile. One is German chamomile, which I have right here, is better for tea, and then there's Roman chamomile. And so Roman chamomile is actually a perennial, but it doesn't have the same characteristic for tea that most people are looking for. So German chamomile is obviously the better option for making tea. And so this is kind of like what we have growing here. So look for seeds that are, as the image I'll show right there, is going to be looking for that German chamomile that would really make your growing of these things better. So I used the botanical interest, and because I really trust the quality and quality control they have in their seeds. You can buy other brands and probably get the same thing. All right, so for starting chamomile and from seed, I don't think I really need to go into that too much in this episode because in my here in the screenshot here, a video I'll link below, I talk about how to grow germinate tiny seeds, and that episode really covers how to get chamomiles going. I already actually covered chamomile being in one of the fastest germinating seeds using the vermiculite technique I had, and the success rate is absolutely phenomenal. And the only difference I'll use there is I'm probably going to use more of that straight potting mix. Already has some nutrition in there. That's a bit of an edit that I would make for my own going next year. In that later on, I discovered that nutrition became a bit of a shortcoming, in that there really was none, and you have to fertilize them fairly quickly as you go. So again, get yourself some soil with nutrition, and to follow that video with how I did my tiny seed starts, and do have some great success. I think my cameos came out in just 2 days, which is absolutely insane. And these are like expired seeds as well. So that will actually get you going. So I normally would start them about, like, I don't know, like February, March, probably March. I will start them for zone 6A. And actually, I'll link below the actual, I mean, not really link, I'll just put down the actual start date I had below from my Excel spreadsheet. And it's really forgiving how things go. And I absolutely would recommend people starting these indoors first. All right, so once you have your chamomiles germinated and started, one thing you should look into is that you should think about thinning them once they kind of get bigger. Or like me, I didn't even thin them because their roots are rather, I will put it this way, it's tolerant of disturbance. So what I would do is I would not even thin them, and when it's time to transplant outdoors, I would literally just kind of like some of the other YouTubers out there, I would just take the whole entire block of root and will smash it on the ground so that the roots will come apart. Yes, there's a lot of tears on the root, but they're really relatively tolerant, and then I will transplant them one at a time to either where they need to be or into pots to pot up. And I have a whole entire seed starting 101 course on that I'll link below for you to really just see how where you need to go when that time comes. But in reality, that's kind of how you kind of get things going. And then once your last frost date comes, in that the generally speaking, the chance of freezing weather is gone. What you can do is you can take these things outdoors right then, and you really want it to be minimum about 1 or 2 inch tall before you take it out, at least according to the farmer's almanac here. So you just take it out there, and then you just basically put it in. Frankly, these things are very forgiving. They're okay with lean soil, but of course, having fertile soil really isn't a problem. So put them where they can get their space to sprawl. And the important thing here is think about not putting it near any plant that attracts a lot of aphids. For example, nasturtiums. Like these are not good companion with it. But in general, they should do well with a lot of things. But again, do your research, see what's in your garden, make sure they pair well with what you have in mind. So before we start doing a garden tour, I want to kind of like get you guys to understand that chamomile naturally is a massive aphid attractor. Aphids love chamomile. And so when I start showing you some of these clips, you'll see ants crawling around and aphid infestation like crazy. But one of the things that, as I mentioned in the episode thumbnail here and the link below, it was my aphid eviction. That video came early this season when aphids were not sprawling over my chamomile, but eventually they caught up. But the one thing I noticed is that that's different this year is that unlike last year I gave up on the cameos and just let them die from drying out. This year I kept alive, and I have done some manual removal of aphid. But the one thing that I've noticed is that it's okay. Your chamomile likely will outproduce its own healing and production well over what the aphid damage will do. So it really wouldn't actually be detrimental because the actual lifespan of the chamomile, especially German chamomile, is short enough that aphids shouldn't really affect your production too much as long as you don't let it become too much. And so what I've done here is actually let the aphids grow, and it's not actually detrimental to the plant. And it's just in the beginning, I have definitely controlled the population a little bit. Eventually, if you have the right supporting cast around you, like alyssum or any of those small, or like cilantro, dill, and stuff, with those tiny blossoming flowers, it's going to attract things like hoverfly that will really be able to eat a lot of these things. And of course, don't ever forget the ladybugs, and they themselves eat it. Their babies eat it. A lot of things that like to eat aphid, and so expect aphids, but realize if you're growing an annual like German chamomile, most likely your plant growth will outpace the damage that the aphids will do, and you will still be able to get away with having yourself a nice harvest even with aphids really posing a threat. So just don't let the aphid deter you from growing chamomile. No, they'll come, but just keep going. And if you give it enough health, the chamomile will just do great. And finally, remember, these things are meant to be lean. So as long as you give it good soil, don't worry about giving it any fertilizer, because the more nitrogen it has, the more it's going to attract that aphid population. So don't worry about it. Maybe if you want to, give it some phosphorus boost, but really, you don't even need any of that. I got a great harvest this year without using a single drop of fertilizer. So this planter here is what we saw earlier from all the still shots left me, still position of me filming. As you can see, this chamomile here is in this planter from last year, and it is not very deep. It's only about, I think, 12 to 18 inches deep. It doesn't need all that depth. And as you can see, it's growing really well here. Even though if you're coming closer, you'll probably notice quite a bit of aphid population here. It's all over. I mean, if you look at the, especially here, some of the dying branches, one of the beauty is once you harvest the flowers, aphids can do whatever they want. You see how like these got all the different dots on them? These are all aphids. And look at their ant friends just having a field day, running loose. These ants here, yeah, they're here basically harvesting the sugar generated by these aphids. And that's kind of how the main thing can discover these things. But aphid in itself, like I said, it's destructive, but because of just the health of the plant, it's able to outproduce the damage that's been done to them. And you can, generally speaking, just get your harvest still and have these things still do whatever they want, and they'll be attracting beneficial insects. So here along my eggplant bed in the green bean bed, as you can see, there's a lot of alyssums planted here. I have 3 chamomiles grown here, out of which 2 of them are probably decimated by bunnies or other, or maybe even just the groundhog, just kind of running around. But essentially right here, what's going on is that the alyssum here is basically attracting a lot of hoverflies and natural predators of aphid. And so when the bunnies and other animals are not eating these chamomile, as you can see, these are basically down to just a nub. They're still alive, a little bit pathetic, but they're fine. But the real nice one is this guy right here. This one lived quite well. As you can see, we've got a lot of flowers going on. And there's really almost no sign of aphid. If you kind of come to this level, as you can see, there's really nothing going on. Because it's right in the midst of this alyssum forest. And it's really creating that essentially defense against aphid. And that is a really nice companion plant. And I think I'm going to use that next year primarily to help my chamomile thrive. So another location I picked this year was near my garlic. I've planted these chamomile here. As you can see, they're doing quite well. The garlic have already been harvested. If you follow my shorts, I had my first garlic harvest and it was awesome. And even uprooting the garlic really did not do much of a damage to the chamomile, as it's really not much of a disturbance, as it's about 6 inches or more away from the garlic, which is the space they need. And on both sides of them, on this side and also on this side, there has been quite a bit of, I guess, flapping. So I kind of just naturally let it kind of fall into the bell pepper, as you can see. And they're kind of coexisting quite happily. And another one that I just happen to have out here, and yeah, this one came out, these all came out pretty well. And if you guys remember, this is the one that basically was a stray seed that got into the oregano seed start, and by the time I found it, it was basically detrimental to the plant if I took it out. So what I did here was I basically let it be, and yeah, it was a little slow on starting up, but everything in here, due to the 6-inch edging, grew a little slower from the reduced sun exposure. But I did harvest quite a few flowers from this anyway. And the new addition this year was the front deck. I had this new plastic planter that I'll link below. As you can see, I have quite the chamomile growing here. And as you can see, it's already browning quite a bit, and that is mostly due to the chamomile plant coming to the end of its life. As I'll explain a little bit in my harvesting section, this is really kind of what it looks like when the chamomile is mostly harvested and spent its energy producing flowers. And they're living quite happily next to my guinea or Korean perilla and dwarf zinnias and a little bit of the Thai basil next to it. Generally, when I harvest chamomile, I like to use a Korean colander here to be able to use it both for harvesting and as well as drying them out. And so, as you can see, basically when you see a flower open up like this, it is ready. And I use my finger, and you see the dark spots on my thumbnail. Yeah, that's kind of not what I do a lot. And what I would do is I would pick it. If there are some aphids, I would rub it on the side and basically squash and kill all the aphids. And then repeat the process. And then basically keep harvesting. And one of the things about harvesting chamomile is that you want to do this often. So actually come out and harvest them once a day. And basically that basically keeps the chamomile going, and it's quite important because the thing is, the more it's called deadheading, which is removing the flowers. Deadheading in pretty much almost all flowers, you're promoting more flower production with deadheading. And deadheading, so this is how you're able to keep the production of the flower the highest. The more you harvest, the better. And generally speaking, from what I'm observing here from the front garden, as we saw, once you've been harvesting it aggressively for about 2 months or so, that's basically the whole energy the plant has for producing flowers. And generally speaking, it's going to just end up dying like we saw in the front. And that's okay because that's just basically the lifespan and the general, um, what's called expectancy that you will be able to harvest from each chamomile plant. And so once you kind of get it here, just let it dry. I mean, I put it in my basement, which is about 50% humidity or less at all times, and I will let it dry in cool condition for about 2 or 3 days. And then when I'm done with these, I will just empty them into basically this used gelato container. This right here, all of this is from this year. As you can see, it's quite a bit. This is a 1 pint gelato container, and I put in a one of those anti-moisture absorbent packs, and this is going to be able to last me at least a few months and be able to give away to some of my friends. So it's been quite a good harvest season already. All right, guys, so now you kind of see how I handle cameos. And one of the things that you got to remember is if you do everything right, the key is to be okay with aphid being all over your cameo and attacking it. But at the end of the day, you can't get rid of them. They're going to show up. But your persistence and the ability to give it a right condition will let it be always be able to keep one step ahead of aphid trying to eat it. And then that will give you plenty of harvest to give yourself enough cameo tea for whatever, however much you're growing, I'm hoping. So again, it's up to you to discover how much you need when it comes to chamomile, and I'll link a few extension articles on chamomile and how to grow them. But this is how I do it in Zone 6A in Ann Arbor, Michigan. So hopefully that gives you a good idea of how this is done. And guys, until next time, keep gardening and keep vibing. Let's go.